So friendship at work, is it really that important? Is it really even appropriate? My answer to both of those questions is yes and yes, but don't just take it from me. Today, I get to talk with my friend Shasta Nelson. She's the author of the new book, The Business of Friendship. I have a PDF and I pre-ordered it the minute it came out. And then I said, I have to bring her to you. You need to talk to her because I believe that friendship is really kind of the basis for all good work. And we're going to define that and talk about that. But I think it's super important. Again, the book is The Business of Friendship. We're going to talk all about that. I met Shasta a couple of years ago. She was forced upon me as a fellow NSAer, like, hey, we got to talk about social media. So it was her and myself and Dr. Nicholas Muir, and it was a fantastic conversation. We had 60 minutes there. Each of us got 20 minutes, cheered each other on. Today, we're going to talk about her book, though, and I'm stoked that she's here. What's up, Shasta? How are you, friend?
Hey, I'm so glad I was forced upon you years ago.
Yeah, right? I mean, we were forced upon each other. Yeah. I remember you saying, why am I on this panel with these social media guys? But when we think about it, right, in between social and media is friendship. That's relationship. That's what we're trying to do because we can't convince anybody if they don't at least see us not as a foe, but as a friend. So how do you define friendship, Shasta?
Yeah, that's a great starting question for sure. And I would certainly say there's a range of it. I teach it in a triangle. So like the lowest level are people we're friendly with. And then we obviously, as we practice, and we can get into this, there's 3 requirements. There's 3 drivers of relationships that we measure. And the more we practice those 3 things, the higher up the triangle we go with somebody, where those would be our confidence, our best friends, where I say friendtimacy, the people we have intimacy and platonic intimacy with. But in all of 3 of those, the definition of a healthy relationship is where 2 people both feel seen in a safe and satisfying way. So you're right. That's how we want to be on social media. That's how we want to do with our sales relationships with our clients. That's how we want to do our advertising and our marketing and our communications and our team leadership and everything. Like at the core of everything business related is relationship and how we make sure we both feel seen and valued and appreciated and that we can rely on each other. Absolutely.
Interesting. So safe and satisfying. Let's break that down because I know I read a study last week that said that 62% of people don't believe that they can share their political views on social media. 62% of people, which is really interesting. And I would say, and when I heard that, I was like, nah. And then I think about my friends and I watch that. And the only people that I see post are those who are very, very much far left or far right. So safe. How do we feel safe and how do we feel, okay, I guess, with sharing something that's different from other people?
Yeah. So this might be a good time to just dive in really quickly to the 3 requirements of relationship, because that helps kind of inform how we define these 3 words. Feeling seen is the result of vulnerability. So obviously there's varying degrees of vulnerability, but we all ultimately want to be seen for something in some way, in some moment with somebody. And so obviously we don't want to show up and have everything seen with everybody, but we do want to have something seen, even if it's just in this moment with me posting something. This is what I want to be seen for right now. In this conversation, in this meeting, what needs to be seen. So that comes as a result of what I call vulnerability, which is just sharing and revealing something that matters to you, whether it's your strengths, your personality, your ideas, your political views, something about yourself. And then it needs to feel satisfying. So we're not going to want to share if it doesn't end up feeling good. And so we need that feeling of positivity. So the base of the triangle is positivity. And that means we need to end up feeling empathy or validation or laughter or inspiration or hope or pride or celebration, gratitude. There's a whole bunch of different ways that we want to have those positive emotions, but none of us actually post something or share something or call a client hoping that we feel crappy at the end, hoping that we feel judged, hoping that we feel, discouraged or depressed. Like we do it whether consciously or not, because we want something that we feel like will lead to us feeling good. And then the 3rd requirement of all relationships is for it to feel safe. And that's the one you raised up. And that comes from consistency. That comes from us being reliable over and over and over. It's the repetition. It's the interaction. It's the hours we log, the time we put in. So what you're talking about when we talk about social media might be lower levels of consistency. We don't know each other in every way all the time. Lower levels of vulnerability. We're not just there showing up at every area of our life. And lower levels of positivity. We're not there to, this is a limited interaction. But nonetheless, in order for something to feel safe, we need to feel that positive feeling, and we need to feel like they saw us. And so that kind of, those three help define safety for us in this moment. Is I'm going to post this and I want to at least feel seen. I want you to like read the post as opposed to just react or just jump to something. I actually want you to see something I'm sharing, and I want you to end up, even if you don't agree with me, thanking me for sharing or validating something, that what's driving this, or like, so there's an interaction there. And the more we do that consistently, the safer it feels.
I think that makes so much sense. That consistency. I mean, what ends up happening a lot of times in those political posts is people jump out of the woodwork to disagree instead of validating. Instead, they invalidate us and they make us feel attacked and kind of very, very much invulnerable, as opposed to vulnerable. Like, oh my gosh, right? Like, oh, and now I have to stand up and push you back. And I think that's so interesting that happens. Go.
Yeah, well, you made the great point right there. I mean, so being vulnerable means lowering our defenses, right? Like that's the definition of being vulnerable, is like not being defensive. And so being defensive is the opposite of being vulnerable. And you just nailed it. I mean, so many people show up and they're not there to be curious. I mean, curiosity is an act of vulnerability and wanting to know why, to say, this is a moment to learn about Phil. Like what matters to Phil? What's like driving him? What does he care about? What does this say about who he is and his values? Like that's vulnerability, to be curious, to want to learn, to inquire, to care about learning about you, helping you feel seen. Whereas most people are just showing up and, to your point, being defensive and attacking, which is not a relationship at all. That's not going to leave anyone feeling safe and satisfied.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we talked a little bit about social. Let's flip that into the workplace, because that's where, that's where your big work comes from. And that's really what I like in this book, is that you've decided to focus on the business side of friendship instead of just the personal side. Because I get the frientimacy makes sense, right? I mean, as we have a relationship, the more time we spend, the more vulnerable we can possibly be, and the better relationship we have, of course. That makes sense. But at work, I mean, friendship isn't that like a no-no? We're not supposed to like each other, are we?
I know that's kind of the way we're raised. People are like, we shouldn't be mixing this, or I'm not here to make friends. Like those are the statements we so often make in the workplace. And when I was doing research for this book, about 30% of people were saying, I'm not sure it's so appropriate. And yet what's so profound, what made me really decide to write this book, was the indisputable research that has been done showing that the best employees say that they have a best friend at work. I mean, Gallup is one of the leading organizations on this, and they've been studying it for 2 decades. The question, I have a best friend at work, and it leads to better retention, more loyalty, better customer service, calling in sick, fewer days. I mean, the list is just so long of like how many more benefits, fewer workplace accidents, and better mental health, and better resilience, and more creativity. And the list goes on and on and on. And there's so many organizations and studies that just kept piling on this. And I kept saying, like, this is so interesting to me that the scientific research shows having friends, liking who we work with, enjoying our coworkers, feeling like we're part of a team, feeling like we belong, like it matters so much. And yet we have this huge fear around it. And most workplaces they're not struggling and staying awake at night being like, how can we help our employees be friends? And yet, if they really understood the ramifications of that, that's exactly what they would be doing. So yeah, I was, to your point, that fear they have and the hesitation, it just doesn't line up with the data. We need to change it. It's not true.
Well, I think that does start, though, by redefining friendship. I mean, the way that you define it as vulnerability, satisfying, and feeling safe. So I think about that. I'm sitting in a boardroom, right? And I'm listening to everybody else, and they have to be willing to share their best idea. They have to be willing to be vulnerable. And then they have to be like, oh, good point, Shasta. I hadn't considered that. Even if I completely disagree, and then to know that there's going to be no retribution, right? To know that you're not going to come back to me after the fact and say, that was a stupid freaking idea, you're fired, or I didn't agree with you and I'm your boss, and therefore I'm going to lower your score on your performance review. So it starts there. But one of the things that you also talk about, though, is this idea of intimacy. And that's a scary thought. I mean, intimacy, boy, isn't that what got us in HR trouble, right? The intimacy at work. So let's define that one too, because I think that's a big word too, Shasta.
Yeah, I love the example you were just giving of the boardroom. I mean, that's what Google calls psychological safety, right? So when I teach these three things, they come from me looking at all the different studies out there that sociologists and researchers are saying, what makes for that healthy team? What is psychological safety? And when we look at it and break it apart, you just gave a perfect example and illustration of it, but it actually means that I can share something, that's the vulnerability, in a way that I don't feel judged, which is the positivity. And I feel like I can keep doing that. The only reason we can feel safe doing that is because in the past, that's how this team has worked, and that's the consistency. And if you look at what makes us feel closer to anyone, what makes for a healthy marriage, what makes for a healthy team, why do I feel bonded to some people and not to others, it always comes down to these three things. And the more we practice those three things, and I am not making the case that we need to be at the top of the triangle with everybody at work. I would say we need to be, I teach 5 different levels of relationship, and I would say that in a workplace, our job is to treat everybody on level 1, which means we are friendly. We will be reliable in our interactions. That's the lowest level of consistency. We will have kind actions, which is the lowest level of positivity. And we will be curious, which is the lowest level of vulnerability. And we owe that to everybody. We don't have the right to come in and just name somebody toxic and refuse to work with them. We still have to show up and be mature. It's like going through a divorce and raising kids together. We still have to show up and work together, and we owe everybody friendliness. And then I would hope that most teams are like level 2, level 3, which is raising all 3 of those up and understanding the expectations of those. And then when you use that word intimacy, most of us freak out and panic. And yet that's what most of us are lonely for these days. I've been in this space for over a decade now, and I can attest that most people, when we say we're lonely, it is not because we just want to be busier with more people, have more interactions, or have more small talk, or just know more people. When we say we're lonely, it's for that intimacy. It's for the top of the triangle. We are lonely because we want deeper connections. We want to feel seen in ways that feel really safe and satisfying with a few people. And I'm not making the case that that needs to all happen in the workplace. I am making the case that 61% of us are not experiencing that closeness that we crave. And if we limit it only to our off work hours and we just keep friendship as a personal issue, we are not going to solve this loneliness issue, because the workplace is where we are spending the bulk of our lives, making our biggest contribution. So if we want something seen, it's that. And this is the place where it's the closest thing we had to like school when we were kids. This is the place where we have the consistency built in for us, and we're seeing the same people and getting familiar with them. So that is why the workplace is still the number 1 place we're making our best friends. And so it's important for us to not avoid the subject, but rather teach and train. What does that look like? How do we do it healthy? How do we do it in appropriate ways? What are good expectations to have? Rather than just say we're uncomfortable with it, so let's not talk about it. We need to say, let's talk about it and actually acknowledge it's happening and make sure that we're all clear on how to do it in the best way possible for my sake and for the sake of my employer.
Wow. That's
my case.
Yeah, no, I dig that, right? 61% though, you say, so that's 6 out of 10 people are not getting the intimacy they crave. And because we work, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, offering some level of that at work seems to make a lot of sense. Lisa Demi chimed in with, it seems like common sense, right? Old school thinking is that you shouldn't make friends at work. But I think you're right, Lisa. And I think, Shasta, to your point, there's 61%. So listening, helping people be seen and being positive, even just acknowledging, hey, that was an interesting point, I hadn't considered that, could go a long way. But now that we're working from home, right, how do we do that more? I mean, Shasta, I don't bump into you anymore at the soda cooler, right? I don't see you at the coffee mess. I don't see you anywhere. So how do we make this more intentional and be more about the business of friendship when we work from home?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I would say 2 quick things on that. And one is the same way that we would say to our kids if they were homeschooling this year or doing school remotely, we'd say, okay, well, then we need to be as intentional as possible to create as many other opportunities for connection. And so for a lot of us, it's going to kind of land on us to organize those things. Like to your point, we've lost spontaneity, just being able to walk by each other's desks. We've lost that proximity. We've lost those few minutes of conversations that we have before meetings privately with somebody sitting next to us. And so the only choice we have is to kind of schedule that in ourselves, which is not something that we're all used to doing. But it's if we could identify the few people from our workplaces that we miss, that we aren't interacting with, and even just brainstorm slightly, like what are a few things I could do to just stay in touch with these people off off of the big team meetings, could we end every Friday together doing 15 minutes of like a toast together and each celebrate one thing that we feel good about that week? Or could we just be texting a little bit more, or have a chat open where I feel like we're interacting during the day? Or are there a few times where every Wednesday at lunch I can just invite a different person to come in and have lunch with me? Like, we need to be thinking this through and planning it ahead of time. And then I would also say our managers, especially, and the people, those of us who are initiating the meetings and the gatherings, we have figured out the consistency piece remotely. I would argue that we have figured out the communication. We're using technology well. We're staying in touch. We're productive. What we are missing is the vulnerability and the positivity piece. Many people are not ending the day feeling more positive, and many people are not ending the day or ending these meetings feeling seen. And so we really have an opportunity to say, okay, we are now all together in a team meeting. What can we do to help make sure that we have the chance to really see people and to leave everybody feeling more affirmed and more valued? And so that's where we have a ton of brainstorming and options that we could be doing to help with that. I have on the businessoffriendship.com, I put together an entire team toolkit. So for everybody who pre-orders the book, you can go and we have videos that people can use on remote meetings where it's kind of a 5-minute video teaching something, and then open a conversation, a dialogue for the team to have about their relationships. I have 35 sharing questions on there that team leaders can break people into small groups on their meetings, or have everyone go around and answer the question. I have a whole bunch of resources on there to try to help foster that connection, because our managers and leaders need to recognize your job isn't just to help make sure everybody stays productive. They're going to burn out if they don't feel seen and connected.
Wow. I love that. You say in one of the videos, and have one of the videos up at the businessoffriendship.com, your fourth one there, how can we accept each other more? That's such a powerful question, and one that I don't think we ask enough, right? How do we accept each other more? And I think that starts first by knowing each other more. We have to ask those tough questions. You ask those team building questions. It's so interesting. One of the questions you ask, what's one specific thing you appreciate about the person to your left? And whether you're on Zoom or whether you're sitting next to someone, you can imagine the person that's sitting next to you on your left, and you can think about that. And while you might not be able to jam something out right away, I think it's a really good thing to think about, and then surprise them and let them know, right? Send them a text, even if you can't do it in the moment. I think that's our miss, is we think we have to do it like right now. Like, okay, Shasta, what do you appreciate about me? Come on, tell me. It's like, no, hold up.
I can do it. I appreciate your affirmation. You're so positive and joyful and encouraging to everybody, Phil.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But I mean, right, that's the challenge here.
Totally.
Is so many of us, we have never even considered that as a question. We've not considered that as an opportunity to go deeper. In fact, if we back way up, we've even been told it's inappropriate. So let's talk about some of those benefits. Let's talk about some of those things, because, hopefully if folks are listening and watching, they're thinking, okay, I understand the research shows that, but what do I get from this? I mean, I don't have time. I've already got too many meetings. And if I got to make one more time for that joker over here that never makes time for me, this isn't going to work. So let's talk about some of the specific benefits that you've done in your research, because I know how hard you've worked on this book. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, no, friendship as a whole is the arguably number one factor for how we determine your health and your happiness. I mean, there's one study that talks about, Dr. Niven says, a lot of people think that happiness is a kind of elusive, hard to name thing. And he said, it's not so. We've been doing studies on this for so long that if you look at all the studies, as he did in his book, 100 Surprising Things About Happy People, he said 70% of our happiness comes down to our relationships. 70%. Like, that's amazing. So you list everything else in your head that you think will make you happy, and that job and this better situation here and that certain body and that, like, the kids doing this, that all adds up to 30%. I mean, it's virtually impossible to be happy if you don't feel fulfilled relationally. And unfortunately, most of us don't. Most of us have friends, but we really are missing the sense of feeling accepted and known. And it's breaking my heart, and it's breaking our world's heart. I mean, it's affecting our health. And we're making actually the first chapter of my book, which is all the health studies. And so this is like what you're asking, the benefits. It's free for anybody who texts the word friendship to 474747, because I want to give that first chapter to everybody, because I go through all the health benefits. Like, this is no small thing. It is crucial. We've got doctors going on record saying this matters more than what you eat. Studies showing that, of more than whether you exercise or not, more than your DNA. It is affecting your health. How loved and supported you feel now tells us more about your health 20 years out than anything else we can study. And that's pretty compelling. And if you can only say that about your personal life, but you can't say I feel loved and supported in my work, where I'm spending most of the hours of my day. If you're coming home drained or not feeling seen or not feeling supported or valued, you can't make that up in your off hours. So I'm not saying that every friendship has to be in the workplace, but you can't be lonely there and expect that you're going to be able to make up what you need as a human being to run well. You're not going to make it up in your evenings and weekends, when it also has to compete with your kids and your spouses and your chores and your errands and your binge watching TV and all the other things that make up your personal life. So we can't do this without including who we are for the bulk of the time during the day.
Wow. Wow. So 47, 47, 47, just the word friendship gets you all the studies, the first chapter of the book. So you have all that data, because, most of the time, if we're going to change a culture at work, we have to have some data, right? We need to have that, that proof, if you will, that goes back to that. So lots of proof there. I hadn't realized 70% of our happiness comes from our relationships. I mean, that's incredible. So do we need more friends or more deep friends as we think about this and as we kind of wrap this going?
Yeah, so it depends for all of us, probably a little bit differently. The 70% comes down to the quantity of friends, the quality of those friends, our relationships with our family, and our relationships with our neighbors and coworkers. And so I think for each of us, when we think about loneliness, when we think about wanting to feel more connected, it will look different on each of us. And so for most of us, though, I would say it's wanting to feel closer to a few people. And so identifying who a few people are in your workplace, in your life, that you can really say, I'm going to invest in these people. I'm going to be more intentional about expressing positive things, which means expressing that appreciation, saying that I'm there for them, making sure that I'm really showing up, leaving them feeling better for having been in my presence, something you do very, very well. When people feel liked by you, they're going to want to come be around you more often, which builds that consistency piece. And the more you enjoy being with each other and keep repeating that experience, you're going to get to know more about each other. And I'm doing the 3 sides of the triangle there. And those 3 things just keep working together. And here's the amazing thing is, we can guarantee that if you practice these 3 things, you will bond with people. And that's the power of this, is it's not some like elusive thing, like if I don't have that, I just need to find the right person. The research does not show that you have to find the right person. It shows that you have to build the right relationship. So the most empowering thing, in my opinion, about this is that now that we actually know, and we can say, okay, these 3 things make a difference to my health, to my happiness, I will enjoy my job more, I will show up with more excitement, I will be a better salesperson, I will know how to bond with people, I will know how to build a good rapport. This is powerful information that not only changes our own personal lives, but makes us more effective and successful. So yeah, to me, you got me on my soapbox. I'm like, this matters so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I love what you just said there, right? Don't focus on finding the right person, focus on building the right relationships. And I think that's a good spot to kind of take us home here. The book is at thebusinessofriendship.com with lots of cool bonuses, Shasta. But if there was one more tip that you would give for folks getting started on this journey and thinking, wow, I get it, I love it, I want to get started. How do they get started, right? Like, what's a good first step for them if they're afraid, or if they're like, I don't know, or anything at all?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's thinking about, I have an assessment. One of the free things I have on the businessofriendship.com is an assessment where you can answer questions about your experience on your team. And it gives you a score for how positive those relationships feel, how consistent and reliable those relationships feel, and how seen, how vulnerable those relationships feel. I would start with taking an assessment like that. And it gives you a score where you say, okay, what's hurting in my experience is positivity, or what's hurting in my experience is vulnerability. Because again, it will look different for each of us. Some of us do positivity really well. We leave people feeling better. Some of us do consistency really well. Some of us do vulnerability really well. But the challenge and the invitation for each of us is to identify which one of these would make the biggest difference in my relationships if I were to be more intentional. And so I would start by kind of getting a score. So then I could actually, and even by taking the test and seeing the questions, it gives you a guideline. You can see which one you score the lowest on. And that would be the area I would say, start focusing on that. Catch yourself doing that. Find the moments where you can do that one differently, where you can practice building the relational muscle and strengthen that muscle. Go to the relationship gym and get stronger in that area, because as we do these things, we always bond with people. It's magic.
And it's friendship, and it works. And I would say, right, if you don't know where you are, it's hard to get to where you want to go, right? It's almost like a GPS. I mean, GPS don't work by just putting in an endpoint. You always have to have a starting point. And I think that assessment is a great tool, right? The businessofriendship.com. That's the website you want to go to. Folks, the book is fantastic. I've got an early copy. Congratulations, Shasta, on a great book and of something super neat. Do you have one? Yay, you got it. Hopefully mine comes very soon. I haven't seen that I have, I haven't seen that mine is shipped yet, but it's supposed to ship soon, right? On the 18th of August. So so it should come soon, but folks, you can pre-order it, right? That's the big thing. I'd encourage you to go to the businessofriendship.com and start making some friends, right? Start doing some things. Think about how you can have more vulnerable, satisfying, safe relationships, and get a copy of this book for yourself. It's fantastic. Again, Shasta, thanks for your time today. Congratulations on a great book. And it's fun to see you again, my friend.
Likewise. Thank you for modeling these three things so well all the time with all of us who follow you.
Oh, you're kind. Thank you. It's my pleasure. And folks, go to the businessofriendship.com, get to know Shasta just a little bit better, and start building friendships at work, because 70% of your happiness comes from your relationships. Go make some friends. Have a great day.